we have a slide advancer? Or is that...
I think it's on there.
Okay.
Is that going to work?
I wasn't going to stand the whole time.
What do I do now?
Wait for it.
I'm pushing the button. I check to make sure that my fly's up. What do I do now?
What's next?
Oh, well, I'll just start talking. So I'm Ryan Bailey. I'm the CEO and the Chief Clinical Officer of Open Door Family Dentistry. We're in Southern Oregon, in Medford, and Grants Pass is where our two practices are. I'm going to spend some time today talking about how our core focus is to help people live longer, happier lives, and how the strategies that ChrisAd has given us help us accomplish that for our patients. I'm also going to talk about why most dentists don't retire in a timely fashion. And I always say for most dentists, they end their career when someone drags their cold, dead body out of their dental practice, which is a real thing, and I show you the numbers on that. And I'm going to talk about leadership. I don't feel particularly qualified to talk about leadership. I've had this experience in my life. I didn't become a dentist to end up being the CEO of a $10 million organization. It just kind of happened. And at some point along the way, I recognized that as a leader, when I make good decisions and when I behave in line with our company's core values, it affects thousands of people in a positive way. And I've had that experience. I've also had the experience that when I make poor decisions and when I don't behave in line with our core values, it affects adversely thousands of people and some of the people that I care most about. And that's a very humbling experience that led me down this path of trying to understand leadership better. And so I want to share a little bit about that.
There you go.
All right. Another thing that I learned from ChrisAd watching John's presentations is that if you have an awesome vehicle, you should put it in your presentation. So I don't have a Ferrari, I've got a Kubota. And there she is.
There she is.
Okay. So dentistry has this problem. It's our problem to solve. 26% of people over the age of 74 in the United States are missing all of their teeth. That means that about half of people are probably missing half of their teeth. Those who lost these teeth suffered from years of pain and gradual loss of quality of life and gradual loss of self-respect. And as we now understand, the loss of teeth early is associated with early death. So these people have lived a sadder, shorter life because they had this problem where they lost their teeth. Now, the real shame here is that they lost these teeth to two diseases, almost entirely these two diseases that are preventable and treatable in their incipient stages for almost free, which is dental decay and periodontal disease. And you look at this and you're like, man, this should be an easy problem to solve. Could you imagine if we were a room full of healthcare or mental health professionals trying to solve those problems? Holy crap, impossible, right? Super hard. Ours is easy. It should be easy, and we are failing miserably. And if you think about this is a carious lesion, and if you look at this in terms of progress over time, and 1 is where it's just showing up on the x-ray, and 7 is where we're extracting the tooth and replacing it with an implant because it's unrestorable. The cost at 1 is $180, which is covered 80% by their insurance, and the cost at 7 is $4,500, which is almost not helped with insurance. All we have to do The only thing we have to do is move the point of intercepting this disease from 4, 5, and 6 to 1, 2, and 3, and we've changed the world. So how do we do that? It's through the hygiene appointment, right? If you want to measure what effect your practice has on the well-being of other people, measure the number of hygiene appointments that you're executing. That is the answer to that question. And that's why ChrisAD has been so helpful to us, because it's this hygiene-based model. And that's what we're talking about when we say we want to help people live a longer, happier life. We're talking about hygiene visits. So when we had a practice in Coos Bay, we went from doing about 150 hygiene visits a month to 4 years later, we were doing 800 hygiene visits a month. That's a fairly small community. We literally doubled the number of hygiene visits that were happening in that community. What effect does that have on this process of disease in that community? It's profound, without a doubt. It's profound. Numerically, verifiably, we have the power to change our communities with these systems, these programs, this whole idea of a hygiene-centered dental practice. So we went about understanding what are the obstacles that keep people from coming in and getting cleanings, and we called those closed doors, and we went about innovating ways to open those doors. And ChrisAD was instrumental in this, and they still are. That's what ChrisAD is to us, is they're someone who's figured out a lot of these questions for us, helps us understand the answers to these questions, and helps us implement them. There is no way we would ever be where we're at if it weren't for the ideas that come from this organization and from the people involved with this organization. This is the two practices, the one in Medford and one in Grants Pass. This is monthly revenue for the last 24 months. So you can see we're growing like crazy. And that's the production, annual production there for 2017, 18, and 19. And our average new patients in those two practices per month in 2019 was 254 new patients between the two practices. So the awesome thing about this, and the wonderful place where we're at, is the better job we do helping people, really helping people live longer, happier lives, the better our lives get, and the better the lives of our staff members get. Isn't that amazing? That is unbelievable. It is. Most businesses don't have this. Most people's jobs don't have this deeper meaning and this deeper purpose, and we've got it. It's unbelievable. This is the averages for the doctor's income. So in 2019, at 28% of production, our doctors averaged $297,000 in income. It's one of the secrets to our success is we don't have a hard time attracting associates because we know how to help doctors be productive within this system. They come in not knowing, and they require a lot of accountability and management and mentorship. That if you don't provide that to them, they will not make this kind of money. They will not help your practice. They need that from you. Let's talk for a minute about dentistry's professional health problem. Did you guys know that in 2001, the average dentist retired at age 65, and in 2014, the average age was 69? You take and put that in perspective and understand that in dentistry, you can only do this job if you are physically in awfully good shape. So there's a whole bunch of people in their 40s and 50s and early 60s hanging it up for physical reasons, which means that 69 isn't really the age, it's much higher than that. There are so many people in our profession that are working until their cold, dead bodies are dragged out of their practices. That is a reality. And then you look at the average American, they're hanging it up at 60, and they're doing it on an average income of $31,000, and doctors' average income is $197,000. What is happening here? There's a bunch of reasons for this, but there's one hidden within the culture and psyche of dentistry that we never talk about. And that is, we don't understand our dental practices as businesses the way we should. Why do we buy dental practices? Because people who own dental practices make more money, right? It's the income side of our business that we're focused on. And I could make some arguments to you that maybe they don't, but we ignore this entire side of our business, which is the equity. It is a thing worth money. And after you've owned a practice for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, you have a ton of equity in this thing, right? But the average dental practice is depreciating by 4% per year. It's declining. And John's number was 9%. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if his number is more accurate from dental economics than mine is, which I think I might have just made up. Then you look at the historical stock market, and I mean the last 2 days have been rough, okay? But historically long term, the return's right around 10%. So what does that mean? My team has a 401k. At 3%, we match their 401k dollar for dollar. So if you look at your dental practice like a 401k, it is your 401k. It is your forced 401k, okay? And it is the crappiest, worst 401k anyone's ever heard of, because my employees get matched dollar for dollar, which means it costs them $50,000 to get $100,000 in their account, right? But I took out a loan on my practice, and it cost me $180,000 to get $100,000 in my 401k, right? And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is if the average dental practice is declining at 4%, my 401k is on the orange line, and their 401k is on the blue line. Do you understand the problem here? My point is, dental practices are awesome to own if they're growing. And if they're not growing, they will be the reason why you work until you're 80 years old and they drag your cold, dead body out of your dental practice. Either make your dental practice grow at least 15%, or there is no reason to own it. Come work for me and make $350,000 a year. No joke. Do it. You will retire sooner. So I wanted to make a couple of points about this growth. Number one, it's pretty easy to put this up here and then have people feel like, hey, look, these guys are making this thing grow. It's some magical business team, okay? There's a couple of things that we have to understand about the dental industry to make this, to help us understand this. First of all, if I was a chef and I said, I'm going to start a restaurant, but I'm only going to be open when I want to work, which is from 2 in the afternoon to 3 in the afternoon, how long would I be in business? Less than 4 days, I'd be out of business, right? But if I'm a dentist and I say, I'm going to open a practice, and I know that the time people want to eat their meal in dentistry is from 4 to 7 in the afternoon, from 4 to 7 in the evening, and on Saturdays, but I'm opening this business, and I'm never going to be open at mealtime for dentistry. How long am I going to stay in business? Probably decades. Look around. They're all over the place. That's most people. Now, why? Why can I, in dentistry, operate a totally backwards model that doesn't address what people need or want from me and not go out of business in 5 minutes? Why? The laws of economics don't actually touch our industry because we have a monopoly. To understand this better, we've talked about this number, 200, and I agree with that. I can't do more than 200 exams and keep up with all the dentistry that generates in a month, which means multiply that number by 6 months, people are coming back twice a year. I can only take care of 1,200 people. Take the number of people in the United States. Take the number of dentists in the United States. Each dentist can only care for 1,200 people. we have created a situation where there are half as many dentists as it would take to care for the number of people there are. This is a monopoly. You are monopolized. So when we talk about, I play basketball every Tuesday night at this church. It's this pickup game with all these fat old men like me. And honestly, I can hold my own, right? I'm obviously not super fast. I can hit shots from way back there, and I can leave that feeling pretty good. But is that the NBA? No. This is not the NBA. From a business standpoint, we are basically adults playing in a 6th grade football league. So part of my point here is you should be able to do this. If you decide you want to, you can. You are an adult pushing 6th graders down and stepping on their necks. Right? Easier than you think it's going to be. But what you have to do is you have to commit to this idea of doing it. And what that takes is leadership. Because I've spoken at these a bunch of times, and I sit here and I listen, and everything everybody's saying is true. It's what the ChrisAd reps are saying. It's an industry that ChrisAd is screaming these principles to, but people aren't hearing it. So you have the strategy. So I decided this year I'm not going to stand up here and tell you our strategy. You know it. Everyone's told you what it is. It's no secret. I'm going to talk to you about the fact that we come to these things and we go home and we don't have the leadership skills to make it happen in our practices. That's the problem. And let me share an experience with you about a leadership fail that I had. I came to the No Limits conference, I think it was in Dallas, in 2015, and Justin Koch stood up and he talked about scaling and root planing and how my patients were only accepting that treatment at 15%. And that's appalling. That is the disease in dentistry, most common cause of tooth loss, right? The most linked to systemic health. And we are completely failing our patients in that regard. He said 15%, and it's unbelievable. And he taught us a strategy of how to overcome that, to have almost every patient say yes to this and make their lives better. And so what did I do? I went home and did nothing. Because I wasn't the type of leader who was behaving in line with the values of our organization. That's why I did nothing. I was too entrenched in my assumptions and thoughts and ideas about what dentistry is and what scaling and root planing is. And I did a perio externship in dental school and blah, 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 blah. But you know who didn't? At that time, Richard wasn't with me, but Andrew was. He was in charge of running the practice. He didn't ask me. He did what was in line with the values of our organization, and he pulled a Dentrix report, and it said our acceptance rate was not 15%, it was 15.3%. And the first patient that came in that needed scaling and root planing, he did exactly and said exactly to that patient what Justin told us to say. And that patient cried about that and was so grateful and brought other patients into the practice, arms around them, and said, these guys are going to take care of you. And since that time, because of that leadership, in line with our values, thousands of people have been affected. Thousands of people that wouldn't have gotten the scaling and root planing and the close follow-up through perio maintenance have gotten it. That's leadership. That's where we're failing. So I want to tell you a story. It's a leadership parable. I told this to one of my younger employees the other day, and it starts out with, there's two SS minnows. It's like Gilligan's Island, and she didn't know what Gilligan's Island was. Everyone knows what Gilligan's Island is, right? Okay, but this time there's two boats. They leave at the same time, okay? And they both get in their 3-hour tour turns into a shipwreck on these two separate islands, right? The first one, the skipper has a gun. So they get off the boat on the island, the skipper pulls out the gun, he points it at everyone and says, you build me shelter, you find me food, or I will kill you. What kind of leadership is that? Authoritarian, autocratic, right? Dentistic. I have authority, I have a license, I have the ability to not sign your check, I have the ability to hurt you and your family, do what I say, okay? The second one, the skipper has a gun. He doesn't even show anybody. But what he does is he gets everyone together, and he says, I want to get home to my family, and I know you want to get home to your family. I know that together we can do this. I have some ideas of how to do this. And people follow him because they value the same thing he does, and because his behavior is in alignment with those values. Leadership is much more simple than we make it. We think it's being articulate. We think it's being super organized. Leadership is way simpler than those. Those are skills that can be helpful. But leadership is, number one, bringing a group of people, building a team of people with a similar set of values. Number two, articulating those values and having them create a mission for that group of people that drives you. Number three, over-communicate that mission and values. If I went to anyone on my team and I said, what are we doing here today and why are we doing it? We're helping people live a longer, happier life. Every one of them would say it. They almost couldn't not say it. They would say it. Sometimes I confuse myself. It's that simple. There's a lot of other skills that you might need to learn to fill in the blanks there, but leadership really is that simple. And the last part of leadership is create systems that make it happen. One of the most important things to me in learning leadership has been a thing, it's called EOS. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it basically gives us a framework that we've been able, this is called our Vision Traction Organizer. Because what happens is we have this vision, but we don't know, we go home, we don't know how to create any traction. And what EOS as a program has done is it's helped me define our core values, create a core focus, and has become the thing that has helped me do those first few fundamental parts of leadership, okay? And that's so important. And I'm excited to have you guys hear from Andrew and Richard, because they're gonna talk about some more of these principles, and they're right. And I know if we can engage this thing with leadership, we can change the world. And there will be thousands of people that have their teeth years from now that wouldn't have if you would have failed at leadership here. So I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thanks. All right. So we have a bunch of fun stuff to talk about with you guys today. A quick personal note. The last time I was on stage, we talked a lot about growth. And one of the stories that I shared with you guys was my family's growth and the struggles that we've had as a family to grow. So I thought I'd take a quick second. First, the quote: without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. Without growth, a lot of those things really just end up being completely meaningless. And in our family, we've had some growth. So it's super exciting. This is Jace and Bella, who we adopted 3 weeks ago. And so they are, thank you. Came through a ton of struggle, came through a ton of fight. Turns out, DHS doesn't actually want you to adopt kids. It's weird. I don't really know what's going on there. But anyway, we can talk about that later. But it's worth the fight, okay? And growth is worth the fight because it brings to you these feelings that are just amazing. And we're going to talk about EOS today. Man, the speakers this weekend have been just phenomenal. The Dales did so great. I've seen them multiple times, and they were nervous, and I'm just enthralled with everything that they said. It's been fantastic. And so, guys, if you can take what you've learned and just simply find a way to apply it, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is just finding a way to fight, okay? You got to fight through it. It is not easy. That's probably the one thing that when John talks, I cringe just a little bit when he says it's simple, because it's not, but it's worth it, okay? It's absolutely worth it. So anyway, we're a family of 6 now. We went from having 1 kid to having 4 kids overnight. I both recommend it and don't recommend it. It got weirdly louder at my house, like not just a little louder, not just like 3 times louder, but like 50 times louder at my house. It's a lot of fun though. I want to talk about failure a little bit today as well, and so we're going to talk about that. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. We've had a lot of failures throughout this entire process, and those failures are really what we've learned from. You know, you have to try some of these things. They have to go wrong for you to understand. You know, we have had some interesting scenarios where we've, come to a conclusion, and this is what we're going to do, and this is going to work, and I know it, and I'm the optimist of our group, and I'm like, absolutely, this is going to go great. And then it just tanks terribly. But we learn from it, and we figure out how to move forward. So don't be afraid of failing. In fact, be excited about it. Some failures are there's an ooh every time, right? Some failures kind of hit you in the face a little harder than others. She was fine. She's done interviews and stuff afterwards. But some of your failures are going to feel like this a little bit. Should I leave this up there? Everybody's just like, no. I was at a seminar just a week ago, actually, and one of the presenters shared this phrase, "I can't wait for you to fail." And I was like, well, that's a jerk thing to say. But it was really fascinating because the concept wasn't, I want you to fail. I can't wait for you to fail to progress. The progression that somebody has from failing and learning from it and growing from it is fantastic. And so, guys, super okay. I can't wait for you to fail at certain things so that you can progress past those things, right? And so it's going to be awesome. So we've failed in different aspects, and what I'm going to talk about today is an aspect of some of our failures. So some people cross your path and change your whole world. This group of our leadership team here is a unique thing, and we have a unique friendship and working relationship where we trust one another, and that trust that needs to exist is paramount, okay? It's funny, Dr. Bailey says that, that the Justin Koch story was a failure in his leadership, but what he doesn't mention in that is that I had the autonomy to go do that. That he didn't need to direct me. I didn't need that aspect of his leadership, but he gave me that ability to go implement that system and that process, which is what I wanted to do, and he gave me that freedom, and that is leadership. And that is sometimes hard for different people to let go and let somebody just go run with something and try it out and see how it goes. Trust is an invaluable, priceless asset you must focus on building with your colleagues, team, and patience, okay? Trust, guys. It all starts with trust. If you're having problems, read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and try to have your team members read that book and everything like that. It all comes down, that first step is going to be trust. So what we're going to talk about today is aspects of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. We would give you all the information in the world about it because it's completely changed the way that we run our business for the positive. It's helped us organize ourselves, keep ourselves on task, hold people accountable, implement processes and systems and all of those different things. But today we just don't have time to go over a bunch of it. So I'm going to start kind of at the top of it and talk a little bit about it. And anybody who wants to learn more about it, we passed out some flyers and we can talk more, okay? So first of all, the visionary. I bought him that shirt and I'm super proud of it. Right? The taco cat. So Ryan Bailey, if he is anything, he is a visionary, okay? And a visionary are a type of person who believe in the impossible, that we have to change the world. He just said it to you. We can change the world. And he gives us this vision, this all-encompassing vision that's super exciting. And we can get behind it. But go ahead and ask Ryan how. And he'll be like, I don't know. or he'll understand aspects of it, but he needs help to implement those different things. So visionaries are out there. Some of you are visionaries, some of you are not. That's okay. But there's about 22% of the population are visionaries, and it's fantastic. Lots of entrepreneurs, lots of people who want to start their own businesses are visionaries. But this is it's important to have one. It's important to have a vision. But it's also important to understand when you're a visionary, your role in this entire thing. So I'm going to go through this a little faster. So visionary DNA. Lots of ideas. They inspire others. They sell and close big deals. They're big problem solvers. They're strategic thinkers. They have, they're always seeing the big picture, and I'm going to skip through a couple of these. They get involved with customers and when vision is needed. Ryan is the person who says the phrase, "We are helping people live longer, happier lives," more often than anybody else in our office, because he helps us all connect the dots that that's what we're about. So that's a visionary. Visionaries also have some challenges, though, okay? And because of those challenges with visionaries, and that's typical, I'm going through this. Let's get the list up there. By the way, I see some people taking pictures. If you want this presentation, I will send it to you. So, sometimes visionaries can be inconsistent. You have organizational whiplash. They get an idea, and they take you down that path, and then they change their mind, and they take you down that path. Quick story, we had 3D scanners, in the practice, and then we had this big discussion about how hard it was to teach dentists to use them, and so Ryan says, absolutely not. We're not using 3D scanners. We're done. And I was like, Ryan, if we turn these back in, we're going to lose money. This seems weird. It seems weird that we're going to go this direction after both we've spent money. It feels like that's the direction the industry's going. He's like, no, I'm positive. This is the way we're going. And like 3 weeks later, he's like, what about an iTero? What if we were to get an iTero? Anyway, and so now we have iTeros. But anyway, it's that visionary vision that takes you different directions. But it's super fun, too. Keeps you on your toes. But visionaries, genius with 1,000 helpers, they don't have as much patience for the details, right? And you see a lot of these businesses that have a visionary, but lots of times what you don't see is the people behind him. Visionaries. John's a visionary, right? Is John in here, or did he leave already? He left. He ditched. Anyway, John is totally a visionary, right? Like, he's always the big ideas, the big problems, things like that. And it's because of people like Corey and Nick and the reps and things, and those people, that they are able to do everything that Chris Ad is able to do. John's the big picture guy. I bet you he's not that fantastic with the details, right? Right? Okay. Entrepreneurs have an unrealistic optimism. It's a chemical in the brain. They see things others can't along the same lines. Steve Jobs of Apple was once described as having a reality distortion field, right? Where they just can't, we think that they're a little crazy, right? Like you describe John, that guy's a little crazy. It's sort of true, but it's mainly just because he sees the world differently than a lot of us do. A lot of us analytical thinkers and stuff like that. He just sees it differently than we do. Doesn't make him crazy, makes him a visionary, okay? But with visionaries, things like this can happen, okay? So we have this goal to build a bunch of practices in Southern Oregon. Last year we did $5 million in collections, and we want to be at $30 million in the next 8 years. And a lot of that comes from Ryan's vision of what he wants to build and curing indentialism, which is kind of crazy, right? We're just going to go out and cure indentialism in Southern Oregon, which, if you've ever been to Southern Oregon, is a bigger problem than in a lot of areas. But because he has that vision, then others in the organization can start to figure out how to do it, okay? And that comes down to this bearded fella, okay? So I'm going to use this term integrator, okay? And an integrator is another word for a manager, but it's a higher level than that, okay? Integrators are have a very specific personality, and Richard is our integrator. So I'm going to talk about him for a second as well. So 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager, okay? Visionaries are really good at big picture, but sometimes those interpersonal relationships and how to deal with different issues eludes them. They just don't necessarily know how to have those conversations. Integrators are the behind the scenes how to make it all work. JFK has the idea to go to the moon, had no idea how to get there, right? Or what was going to be required, but there were people behind the scenes that did, right? Richard, one of the best parts about bringing Richard to this conference is he hates nothing more than being up on stage right now. And so I'm just loving this. It's super duper fun, right? And because he wants to be behind the scenes. He doesn't enjoy the spotlight. He enjoys getting a ton of stuff done. And he enjoys thinking through the problems. But he enjoys seeing the vision and then figuring out how to actually bring it to fruition, okay? Anybody know who that is? Disney, Roy Disney, okay? So Walt Disney is the visionary, but didn't do everything. Roy Disney did. Roy Disney figured out how to bring these big, crazy ideas that Walt was having 1,000,000 miles an hour, all the time, different ideas of different things. But Roy Disney is the one who brought it to pass. So an integrator or visionary Prozac, okay, is somebody who calms them down, somebody who brings them back down to planet Earth. You know, when they've got these awesome ideas, but that can derail an organization extremely quickly, right? A visionary can be super excited to take the company in this direction, but they're also asking you to overdo it. You can't accomplish all those things at the same time. An integrator is a person who has the unique ability to harmoniously integrate the major functions of the business, run the organization, and manage the day-to-day issues that arise. The integrator is the glue that holds the people, processes, systems, priorities, and strategy of the company together. I've said a bunch of times that I really enjoy spreadsheets. You should see Richard's face light up when we start talking about systems and processes. It's weird. So integrator common traits. They are decisive. I'm gonna go through these so that he has enough time because we're gonna go over some tools. But they are a very strong leader and manager. Richard's management experience is extremely robust. They're problem solvers. They're adaptable. They're very self-driven and adept at self-management and things like that, and very personally accountable. Continuous learner on there as well. But common challenges for the integrator is the job can be thankless, accusations of pessimism. I'm the optimist, he's the pessimist. Being considered negative by others or the hole poker. Loneliness, constant friction and tension, because every idea that Ryan and I have, Richard's like, no, we can't do that, and here's why. I'm like, you're a jerk, man. Freaking buzzkill. Frustration balancing so many resources, being seen as the bad guy. I was so wishing you would mistype that and put the bald guy. Having to do the dirty work, lack of recognition, having to say no a lot, setting the bar too high on unrealistic expectations, okay? So ultimately, understanding those two personality types, okay? These two guys have very different personalities. And what's fascinating is I'm a little in between on both. So I couldn't be both I couldn't be either in our organization because I'm not far enough a visionary and I'm not far enough an integrator. When Ryan would have a crazy idea, I'd be like, yeah, freak yes, let's go do that, right? And when Richard says we need to slow down, I'll say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I wasn't capable of being either of these positions. But the combination of having a visionary and an integrator is something fantastic, okay? And it's something that every business, if you can find those people to be able to understand that relationship and that type of a model, can catapult you forward like you wouldn't believe, okay? And do it in an organized way that doesn't make you want to die. There's no denying that there is a real chemistry when it's right. Just like rocket fuel, there's a chemical mixture that happens, and the result is a powerful expansion of force. When this force is properly focused, it's capable of launching you into orbit. So, integrators, And visionaries, this is where it talks about how only 5% of the population would be considered an integrator. They're pretty rare. 22% of the population would be considered a visionary. There's a lot of organizations that don't have a visionary, and that's okay. But every organization needs an integrator, needs somebody who's going to hold everyone accountable for those different things. They always drive each other a little bit crazy. We've got some fun stories about that. Need for conflict is important. Like, we're all friends. If we filmed some of our meetings and you guys could see how much we yell at each other, it would be awesome. But it's done in a way that we are just trying to get to the right answer. Okay? It's not done maliciously or anything like that, but we are opinionated people that are trying to figure out the right answer. And again, this aspect of leadership that comes from Ryan, from the top down, is that Ryan doesn't hold a gun against us and say, this is what we're going to do because I'm the owner. We argue and we figure out what's the right answer. Richard's the pessimist, Ryan's the optimist or the visionary, and then I'm in the middle. And it's super fun, and I eat popcorn and watch them duke it out. Polarity energizes creative freedom. So I'm going to turn it over to Richard now, who's our integrator, to talk to you about some of the tools that EOS has helped us develop over the last 18 months that have really contributed to our success being where it's at, and us being able to have some of the systems, policies, all of those different things in place to make it so that we can grow at alarmingly fast rates without the chaos that sometimes ensues. So, Rich.
Thank you. So first of all, let me start off by apologizing for my voice. I have a cold, so you guys are going to get this presentation with my sexy voice. Is it bad that the sexiest thing about you is you're cold? That's right. That's my question. I'm going to start with a story, and those that know me know that this is a pretty common theme for me. I have a bunch of kids. I'm crazy, right? I've got 5 kiddos at home, and they usually have a screen in front of them, okay? And once in a while, they'll come up from that screen, and they'll say, hey, Dad, watch this video, or hey, Dad, I read this thing. So that happened to me about a month ago. My teenage son said, Dad, I just read this thing online, I got to tell you. And I said, okay. He said, when a nuclear bomb goes off, somewhere away from that in a supermarket, a frozen pizza is cooked perfectly. And I did what old people do, right? I passed that on, right? So I talked to some people about that, and I shared that idea with them, and they said, they had all kinds of takes on it. You know, some people said, oh, way to find the silver lining in that, you know, and they had all kinds of takes. My take was, I started thinking, can we evaluate this as a business decision? You know, how many pizzas can we cook at once? How far away is that supermarket? How much closer do we have to be to do deep dish pizza, right? Can we deliver? Is it safe to eat? Those are the questions that are going in my head. So when Andrew's talking about integrator, I am an integrator by nature. My brain works that way, okay? And so the presentation that I'm going to go through here with you is real nuts and bolts. It's a couple of things, because when I come to these conferences, I'm looking for a couple of nuggets to take home with me. And so mine are very kind of hands-on, something that can be applied to any of the businesses that are in here. But first, let's talk for just a second about Ryan's vision, because when I hear Ryan's vision, like Andrew said, my view is a little different. I'm trying to see this big thing and then figure out how to turn it into actionable items, okay? So the vision in its simplest form, and I've heard Ryan say this to our staff many times, but the idea goes something like this. From 20 years from now, I want some dental researcher to look at where we own practices and ask, why do so many more people there still have their teeth compared to the rest of the world? And the answer to be, because of Open Door Dental. That's the vision, okay? So I immediately start coming up with the obstacles. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. They're in your book, and frankly, they've basically been addressed the last 2 days inside this seminar. These same obstacles that we have to face, you have to face. And the same with the solutions. Here are some of our solutions to those problems, and many of those have been addressed as well. What I want to talk about are a few concepts, and I'm going to give credit to where credit is due. And I'm a bit of a book snob. I read a lot. If I put a book up here, it's worth your time to read it, okay? The top two, Get a Grip and Traction, those are the EOS systems that they're talking about. This EOS system that we're telling you about isn't something that we represent. It's not, there's no money driven. These books can be bought for $20 on Amazon. They're worth your time, and they'll help you get hold of your organization. The Advantage over there on the side is from Patrick Lencioni. I would frankly recommend virtually all of Patrick Lencioni's books. Very down-to-earth business, okay? And Chris Ad, frankly, they're behind a lot of the large picture concepts that we use in our practice. So let's start by talking about the People Analyzer. I am a business nerd, and I would love to geek out with anybody who wants to talk culture and core values. Those are a couple of my areas of specialty, and I love that idea. But I want to give you a tool that can help you use these big culture ideas and these big core value ideas. I want you to be able to turn those into helping you with your employees, and here's how. Kenneth DeWitt said, core values are the foundation upon which an organization's culture is built because when used correctly, they attract the right people to your company and repel the wrong ones. So your core values can help you in your business. This idea of right people, right seat is an idea from Jim Collins. Some of you might be familiar with this. Right people is answered by people having the core values that you espouse. The right seat, it has something to do with what we call GWC in our organization. It's get it, want it, and have capacity to do it. So let me describe really quickly what these three things are because they're going to be relevant in just a second. Get it means that you mentally have the capacity to do this. You are smart enough for the job. And in our case, almost always the people that we're working with, they get it, right? They have the ability to do the job. Only on a couple of occasions, and I've, in my career, hired and fired a lot of people, it's never because of get it. Almost everyone can get it. Want it, it's pretty simple. Do they want this position? Do they want this job? And you know of people, you can probably think of people in your head right now of who want it, where they're at, and don't want it where they're at. And last is capacity to do it. This is kind of the technical component. This is where they have the certification they need, or they need some additional training, or do they have the time to do this job? That's the capacity component, okay? This is what a people analyzer looks like. You can Google this. You can find this form online. This is an EOS form. But what you do is you'll take your employees, you'll put them their name on the side, you'll put your core values at the top, and you'll put get it, want it, and capacity at the end of that. Now, this form can be used in 1,000 different ways. We use this in reviews. We use this in employee disciplinary conversations. We use this in all kinds of situations. Where we're in a situation as a leadership team and we're trying to figure out what to do with a particular employee, we might fill this form out for that employee. We've used it as a leadership team health exercise where we filled it out for each other and shared the answers. And frankly, they weren't all pluses. And it helped our team get better, okay? So you're going to put a plus, a minus, or a plus minus, meaning that they always do it, they never do it, or they sometimes do it. And you're going to judge them by the core value that you have. On the get it, want it, and capacity, you're going to put yes or no, right? Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? That's a yes or no. Down below, and this is where it becomes actionable, is the bar. Now, this bar is where you're going to set your standard. You're going to set the level of what you'll allow in your organization, okay? And you should do this not when you're in the heat of the moment making an employee decision. You should do this before when you have a clear mind as to what that bar should be. So, for example, you can put a plus minus. In this case, we have a plus minus and a minus. So we'll allow a plus minus, we'll allow a minus, but we're not going to allow two minuses. If we're evaluating an employee and they have two minuses, they probably aren't the right person, right? They're not the right fit for us. And then down on the gets it, wants it, and capacity, those all need to be yeses. Maybe, rarely, occasionally, in the capacity side, you might have someone who doesn't quite have that training yet, and you're going to train them up. So they might be a yes-no, right? They're in that process. But if you have any no's on the gets it, wants it, or has capacity, then they're out, right? They're not clearing the bar. So these values, I don't want you to get confused, where it says plus minus down below positivity and a minus underneath collaboration, what that means is simply in any of the values, right? It could be in any of those values. You can be super, I have super high expectations, say we want all pluses, and the reality is that's just not how most people are gonna function. So you'll need to pick that out. But this becomes then the clear line. So when you have an issue with an employee and you're like, are we keeping them? Is this the right person? Do we have the right fit? You can use this tool very simply. You might have the employee fill it out. You might have the manager fill it out, and you might ask a peer to fill it out. And then you'll be able to sit down and gather some actual information that's really actionable. And this filled out once might look different than 6 months from now. You might sit down with an employee and say, fill this out for yourself. Here's how I fill this out. You notice how there's differences here? And then you might say, let's do this again in 6 months and see that. So it's a really actionable tool. So anyways, that's the first one, okay? It's called the People Analyzer. Next, I want to talk about Delegate and Elevate. This is something that has various names in business, but under this Delegate and Elevate idea is that you might be functioning in areas where you shouldn't, right? For a variety of reasons. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at all the tasks that you do for a week. You're going to write them down, and then you're going to break them into 1 of 4 categories. You're going to put them up in the top left. You see there it says, you love it and you're great at it. Next to that is, you like it and you're good at it. Below is, you don't like it but you're good at it. And on the right is, you don't like it and you're not good at it, okay? Once you've broken your tasks, your responsibilities into these areas, you're going to go down that bottom right, and you're going to try to get those things off your plate as soon as possible, right? You don't like it, and you're not good at it. You shouldn't be doing it, okay? And then on the left bottom, you're also going to try to get rid of those too. And by get rid of, I mean assign to other people. Now, you're going to find when you do this exercise with employees, you might have great, competent employees who love and are great at the things that you don't like and are not good at. They should be doing those things, okay? It's going to energize them. It's going to give them energy. It's going to take energy away from you. You need to use this tool to help spread out what needs to be done and get it in the right people's hands. Okay, that's the second tool. And lastly is scorecards. This has 1,000 different names, right? It might be a dashboard, it might be it's metrics, analytics, all these names, but the gist is this. You need to have data that you use to make decisions from. You can't look at the data once in a while. You need to get in a regular rhythm of looking at the data and put it in a position where you can use it. I'm going to show you our scorecards. I'm going to show you what we do quickly. It's not to say that it's right. I want to give you just an example of what we're doing. There's a lot of specifics that we use inside our scorecards. We look at the data weekly. We set goals quarterly. So we're looking at it weekly, but we're setting goals quarterly. So you're going to see what ours looks like over a quarter. And like Andrew said, I'd be happy to talk to you about this after if you have questions about why we use the metrics we use. Now this, I should mention too, this scorecard is for our leadership team. So in our organization, different teams in our organization have different scorecards. They're looking at different metrics. This is the one that, we'll go through this exercise. If you were stranded on a desert island, we had to do this ourselves. If you're sitting in that hammock on that little sandbar, and you can't communicate with your team, but the cabana boy or cabana girl brings up one sheet of paper. What do you look at on that sheet of paper? What are the metrics you're looking at that allow you to know if your company is being successful or failing? That's the answer to your scorecard, okay? So I'm going to show you what's on the sheet brought to us by our cabana boy or girl, okay? Here's what it looks like. So ours is very simple. Again, those are weeks across there. On the left, you see who it's assigned to. Those are the people that are populating those numbers every week. The categories, you can see what our goal is for the quarter, where we stand towards that goal so far in the quarter, and there are weekly goals. Red means we haven't hit it that week. Green means we have. It's that simple. I'm going to focus in on just a second to show you those categories because I know many of you probably can't read those. But the point of this isn't exactly what we're doing. The point of this is for you to come up with a measurable way that is recognized by your team as the way to win the game. So here's the categories we're using. This is who has these assigned to them. So a bunch of these require explanation, but active patient increase, That's not, we don't define active patients as the dental industry does in broad. In general, that you're talking, active patients are 18 months for us. An active patient is someone who's been in our practice in the last 9 months. And we set that goal specifically to make sure we're catching them in the recycle and giving ourselves a month or two if they fall out of cycle to get them back. But for us, an active patient is someone who's participating in our hygiene program that's going to help them live a longer, happier life long term. So it might surprise me you did not see new patients on our leadership scorecard. That's because that number it ends up in the active patient increase. New patients help increase it, but so does retention. Okay. Hygiene visits, new patients converted, and hygiene recall rate. We have these two categories split out. This is kind of what Justin was talking about yesterday, where if you focus on just a recall rate, you might not be able to break this out and know how people are moving from newly into your practice into your hygiene program. So we determined this some time ago and put this down as new patients converted, meaning converted into hygiene, and then the hygiene recall rate. We have 4-week hygiene scheduled. What this is it's not a specific metric that we have a goal for. Rather, it's a predictive measurement. So by seeing always what's coming up in the next 4 weeks, we have a little bit of power to predict forward to say, what's staffing look like? What do we need to be doing in the future to be prepared for it? It gives us a very good sense. It's a finger on the pulse of where our business is headed, and it's in the future. It's not something that we have to react to because it's happening today. It's something that we can look forward and say, okay, we can prepare for tomorrow. Collectible production. We don't deal with top-end production. We deal with just collectible production, what we can actually collect. Doctor production per hour, doctor production per exam, collections to collectible production. Average AR days and our days of cash are critical. Again, that's one that needs a little bit of explaining, but it's what we use as a metric to know how much cash we have in the bank compared to the expenses that are coming to make sure that our company is safe and healthy cash-wise. And I could geek out with you after the meeting if you want to talk about that some more. So that's the other thing, scorecards. So those are the 3 tools I'm going to give you guys to hopefully take away and have a little nugget you can implement in your practices on Monday. I'm going to turn the time back over to Andrew, but one quick word about Dr. Bailey. A lot of the reason that we're successful in our business is because Dr. Bailey is willing to let guys that aren't doctors be involved in areas that we love and are passionate about and are focused on. And it's made an awesome recipe for success inside our business. Thank you for your time.
There's a timer down here, and I have 10 seconds left. So, guys, we put on a seminar. This is not a lot of time to talk about some of these things. So this isn't a plug for anything, really. We just want to let you know, we put on a seminar in Oregon for 2 days. If anybody's interested in coming to that and spending 2.5 days with us, Medford's pretty cool. Crater Lake's cool. So if anybody's interested, come and talk to us afterwards, and we'd love to have you there. But this is our contact information. We love talking to you guys about solving problems. One of our big things is we felt like Justin and Declan and a bunch of the other practices that have spoken here in previous years have really helped us along the way, and we want to help other people. Like I said at the very beginning, we made a ton of mistakes that we would love to help you avoid. There's definitely decisions we wish we could have back, and we'll tell you all about it and give you the whole lowdown on the whole scenario so that you can maybe avoid some of those pitfalls. So anyway, I think it's lunchtime, so yeah.
Yes. Thank you, guys. All right, lunch in the next room. Let's try to get back by 1:30.